Hi, I'm Tom Leuc. I'm making this NL200 heads up video, or I'm sorry, 6max video on two tables. I'm a NL1000 to NL5000 player. I do alright, and now I'm going to be adding some videos to PokerZion for you. This is actually a video taken post-session. I'm doing the narration post-session. I've already played this game, and I'm going to be talking you through what some of my thought processes are. I'll also be talking about in the downtime a lot about optimal versus exploitive play, which is something probably gets talked about a good deal. There are two basic ways to approach poker, and they're not mutually exclusive, but a lot of the time they are. So a lot of the time when you're playing, you're just trying to exploit your opponents. You know, someone folds too often in a certain area, you bluff them more there. Someone doesn't value bet a large enough range and doesn't ever bluff, you can fold to him more often. And a lot of people seem to think that this is really the only way to play poker, and that's wrong. I'll get back to that in a minute. So I've called with 8-8 here pre-flop. I would call with any pocket pair in that situation. Most overcards to this flop I would call with. So if I call here, I could have overcards. I could have a pocket pair. I would almost never raise this flop, and that's important. So he still should have very little idea of what my range is. He can get rid of some of the like 6, 7, 8, 9s type hands. Now he checks to me. Now this says to me overcards most of the time. That's the range I would put him on. Now I have to think about whether I'm going to bet or check behind. So I think about what my ranges are for betting and what my ranges are for checking behind. And I think if I bet here, I have overcards or an 8. I think I'm going to be betting here a very large percentage of the time, which of course leads to the check raise bluff on the turn in a situation like this. I decided to bet small. Basically, I was trying to protect my hand, and I would have folded if he check raised me, and I would have called with any set. Sets were part of my range too, though, although albeit a small one. So ace king, I decided to 3-bet whiskey dunk. At this point, he's proven to be a bit of a lag. He's been raising a lot under the gun actually, which shows that his PFR should be really high. That means I'm going to be 3-betting here a lot, and I'm going to be continuation betting almost always. This is at this point actually an exploitive play. I wouldn't always continuation bet with ace king there. So now I have an ace, and I have to think what I would do with my whole range. If I have overpairs, at this point I might check. And so I don't want him to be able to put me specifically on 10s through queens. So that means I should probably check some of the time with ace king and ace queen. Although I don't have to do it all the time because there are more combinations of ace king and ace queen. But so I check here, and he bets. Now I should think about his range a little bit, but I know I can't fold ace king, because if I fold ace king here, then I'm folding basically my entire range, and that means he could be betting any two. And as I already said, he's kind of a bad laggy player, so his range is wide. He could have quite a few hands, draws, maybe even weaker aces that he's value betting at this point. Although he did call the continuation bet. He bets 55, feels a bit like value town. Again, I decide I have to call. It's a bit of a protection for my kings, queens, and jacks too, having ace king there on that call, because he can't always bet there with weaker aces. Okay, so I was talking about optimal versus exploitive play before, and it's important to realize that when you play poker, there is an optimal way to play poker. No one's going to figure it out ever, but we can guess what it is in a lot of situations, and you can use a lot of tools to help you from straying too far from it. Things you should be asking yourself whenever you're folding is, if I fold this hand, what percentage of my range am I folding? And things you should ask when you're betting is, what hands am I betting with? Does it allow my opponent to play perfectly against me? So if you're in a situation where you're betting with a set and it occurs to you, hey, I would actually only ever bet with a set here, then you're probably doing something wrong. Either you shouldn't be betting with the set there, or you shouldn't not be betting with any other hand. Okay. So I started to get I really came into this knowing nothing about any of these players, and the right table is going to go away in a little bit. I decided to switch tables. So we'll focus on the left table. If you pay attention to Rapazel and Juicy, you'll notice Rapazel is an extremely aggressive player. He's trying to take down every pot. And so if you can look at poker kind of from a psychological angle, and you want to get in these guys from a psychological angle, you're trying to figure out what motivates these players. So for Rapazel, he probably has a bit of an ego. You try to create a character for these guys, and he wants to force you to fold all the time. So this is going to be something I'm going to exploit later. Um, Juicy, on the other hand, seems to want to see every single flop. He's extremely loose pre-flop, except then he gives up all the time post-flop. So what I'm going to be doing is calling a lot of his raises pre-flop, and whenever he limps pre-flop, I'm going to raise him. And then just a simple exploit, which used to work a lot better, it doesn't work as well in these games, is to bet pre-flop and then continuation bet. And I'm going to make a lot of money off of Juicy that way. This is an interesting hand with ace-4 here. I decided I should be raising this small bet most of the time, but I thought ace-4 really doesn't fit into my raising range. I decided I should be raising with any pair, and any flush draw, and any straight draw there. And so, that gives you a bit of a grounding as well. Whenever you're thinking about making a move, instead think about what range of hands you would make the move with, because your range is important. You shouldn't ever, most of the time you're making a mistake if you say to yourself, I'm betting my whole range here. Not always, but a lot of the time that's true. And so if you're bluffing sometime, you're unless you're playing a very bad player, you shouldn't. The only variable in that decision shouldn't be what your opponent's range is. It should also be your range. If you're ever betting with your whole range, you're giving your opponent a good opportunity to exploit you, either by calling more loosely, or by check raising you, or raising you. Okay, so at this point in the game, I had realized that Juicy was very bad. So I was, a7 is a kind of loose raise in the cutoff there, but basically whenever he limped, I would raise really close to any two, unless there were other players in the hand. This ace-3 call here is pretty bad. I knew Whiskey Dunk was bad. I wasn't prepared to make a move against him yet, because I didn't really know him that well. So I decided to call, and if I had an ace, I was probably going to call down. Of course, there are a lot of other factors. Any continuation bets, and I have to fold here. But I think I probably should have folded pre-flop with that ace-3. Yeah.